Bright and early this Monday morning. Lagos, join us, Lagos. Let's discuss some of the stories before. Good morning, and we have Fred Alison at FB Alison. Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Lagos, different ways you can contact us.
This or just a message with our WhatsApp number, which is 08.
Come of today's Arbain trek by the Islamic movement.
Of the incidents occurred.
Just for clarity, because not everyone has read the stories.
Absolutely, it's an incident, and well, you know what it actually says is that at the situation on Saturday, we had the troops of the Army Headquarters Garrison Division taking down ammunition down from Abuja to their Army Central Depot as well to in Kaduna, and then they were stopped by, and these are the Islamic Movement of Nigeria group. Actually, it's been said that this protest was, people had actually known about the protest earlier on, and this was by the Abuja Peace and Development Initiative. They had actually warned the security operatives of this protest beforehand, but unfortunately, the government has not been able to do much about it in terms of stemming the protest that was going to be happening. And what the report actually says is that the protest was actually being held because, of course, this is an annual protest that they normally have every year. They do this walk that they normally do. Fortunately, what we've had is that we've had several incidences where this has happened. This happened last year where we had 2 people killed in Kano. We also had it also occur as well too, the year before as well too, where people also died as well too, and the numbers of casualties then by the police wasn't actually disclosed as well.
Not clear.
They were not clear. So, you know, what
it is to make sure that the ammunition gets to the right place. Now, if some people stage a kind of blockage, okay, they need to find a way of passing through them. Now, I always say something. We need to respect the law enforcement agents. I'm not saying that it is right for them to open fire, but the news that we have, the story that they've given us, is that they had to get what's it called, like get some reinforcement to help them disperse the crowd, and they had to fire into them when they were being stoned. We saw pictures of their vehicles.
I'm sorry.
Also
let's just take a second and go back and look at the antecedents of this and the history of this. The Shiites every year gather to a large extent peacefully, as far as they're able to protest what has been the unlawful incarceration of their leaders. The Nigerian police force
this Shiite people, you know, the military did not ask for these guys to be actually present at that point in time. I do have an issue. Hold on, I do have an issue actually. Of course, when it comes to using live ammunition to disperse the crowd, of course there should be. It should never be. And when we're talking about the value of life, of course there should be value of life, and that's the reason why we have so many issues occurring in Nigeria. What's the?
Is it not also responsible? Is it not meant to be a responsible association to also know that their people should leave the road anytime they see the military passing through? When you see, I always say something: if you're going to protest, you have to make sure that your protest is as peaceful as possible. Do not go into the faces of the law enforcement agency. It is never acceptable.
Burning lies on both hands.
A number of times you have to remember that when these people gather, they do not go and meet law enforcement. Law enforcement comes to find them.
Make way for the law enforcement.
Protest. And don't forget that we also had reports that categorically said that a number of them, was it in 2016, were murdered. They were killed unceremoniously and they were dumped, and nothing has still been done. Okay. So I mean, I really defy
I agree
people
with that
to
part.
say.
Let's forget about. Let's face this.
WhatsApp number 080944400981. To the next story from Vanguard newspaper. This affects Lagos precisely. Traffic police launch joint operation to restore sanity on Lagos roads. I'll come story. Now, the Lagos State Police Command, they said they've launched a joint operation with other sister agencies to seriously tackle the upsurge of traffic gridlock on roads across the state, caused by lawlessness on the part of motorists, among other factors. They said they are joining forces with some sister agencies like the FRSC, the NSCDC, the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, the Lagos State Traffic Management Authority, LASMA. Looked through the details of this, especially relating to the areas that they've marked out to cover. They said it requires robust intervention. Ayo, your take on this?
This is quite interesting and I think very welcome because most legations have suffered what I'll call the height of gridlock lately. I'm glad that my area, VGC, Aja, has been mentioned here because we suffered a lot, had to leave home very early this morning. Now, we know already that one of the major problems that causes traffic in Lagos, and I'm going to say this outrightly, is the downfall drivers. Okay,
not necessarily just
they're
them.
just
I mean, they're part of they might be, some of them might be part of the problem, but
so we know that we have issues with roads, bad roads, very small roads, but the fact is one of the major reasons is because people do not obey simple traffic laws, and the major culprit of this are the downfall drivers. We can call it out or we don't call it out. They park on the road to pick their drivers.
Private car owners and drivers still flout traffic rules. Wrong way wrong.
And we were not sure if it was exactly true. Now we're certain that it is true. They're going to be coming out with mobile courts, and if you're caught, your vehicle is going to be impounded, and then you're going to be
prosecuted.
Yes, in a mobile court or keke or private. Get ready because the law is coming to you.
Thank you very much.
Enforcement.
For this one. Let's move on to the next story.
Indeed, we've got this next story in from the Punch newspaper. Let's talk about the cop involved in the ex-minister's daughter killing as part of the investigative team. To be honest, I'm going to go to you, Ayo, for your take on this particular one. So we've got a police officer who is said to be part of the police team that allegedly killed Anita Aka. She's been involved in the investigation into the homicide. This is what sources have learned. So essentially there were 4 people, or 4 policemen, including a female officer, that were part of this killing, which again reports say that Anita was shot in her car for refusing to open her car door by policemen. The fact that been told by the police that the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, had ordered the detained, had said that they would be reprimanded. Understand that only one person has been, and that's the superintendent of the fatal shooting. And then to discover that someone who was there, who was involved in this heinous crime, really is part of the investigations. What are your thoughts vis-a-vis how the police seem to be operating at the moment?
Okay, so one glad thing, first of all, is that they're following through with this investigation. So that's a good part. Because we've had cases of extrajudicial killings, some that have been swept under the carpet. Of course, this has a lot to do with the fact that she was the daughter of a former Minister of State for Finance, and what is a painful thing, because normally when you see this kind of issue, when the police is being investigated for a crime, now the police work together already. Normally they say, even though you have internal affairs, the fact is that the internal affairs people still have drinks together with their colleagues, so somehow there's going to be this kind of prejudice when it comes to the investigation and all that. But you set aside a different department to the police. That's how it's done. Now, when you have an investigation ongoing, and according to this claim, it's a claim for now, it says that the person leading was a lady that was involved in the shooting, and that only the superintendent of police who fired the shots is being detained, whereas the law that was, or the directive that was given by the IGP of police, is that everybody that was involved in it should have been detained immediately. It's sad because there's no way you're going to have a free and fair investigation if someone who was involved, or at least even within the vicinity, the fact that she was seated with the person, the culprit, the person that allegedly shot, she was seated with him, leading the investigation. It's just normal. I mean, Valentine, if anything happens and I'm told to investigate you, I know you. No matter how just I want to be, my perspective is going to be a little bit skewed. Yes. So they need to look at this. These are still kind of allegations, so we're still waiting for the police to come out and tell us what they
We're
have
definitely
to say.
glad it's at least come out into the press so that we can monitor the situation as it progresses.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Gbolahan, this next story, Daily Times. Manufacturers caution federal government on signing agreement. The new president is the one saying this. The new president of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Engineer Mansour Ahmed, has called for a detailed study of the potential benefits and costs of the African Continental Free Trade agreement to Nigeria. If we recall, President Muhammad Buhari had last month, on October 22nd, inaugurated a committee for impact and readiness assessment of African Continental Free Trade Area. And in the same vein, the president of MAN is that Nigeria should really look into the details before and identify opportunities and risks that would result from the implementation of the agreement before they go into it. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the story does not really speak much anyway about the African Free Trade Agreement, which Nigeria is not a signatory to at the moment.
Yes.
And of course, the reason is that when it was time for everybody to sign, of course, what's a free trade agreement for start off with? It's just an agreement between all the African 51 or 52 African countries anyway, where we agree to lower the trade barriers across Africa and increase the level of trade that we have across the African region. Because it's been said when we compare Africa to the rest of the to other continents, anyway, we have the lowest amount of trade amongst each other. Africa has about 16% of trade, while other continents like Asia and Europe are trading amongst themselves. We're talking about 50%, 40% trade. So we're trying to see how is the trade across the different countries.
Yes.
And of course, when all of this was being looked at over a very long or lengthy period of time, Nigeria did not actually look at what we were getting into and look at what we need to investigate and look at the benefits. It's very important for us to look at the benefits.
Yes, but man, I've been saying it for a while. We would hope that by now they would have looked at the benefits and told us. But let's move on to messages that are coming through. We've got a few of them up on our live stream. Jay Iziali says, what kind of investigation are they conducting when the suspects are the same ones carrying out the investigation? Nigeria, we hail thee. Big shout out to Tunes Bobo, who's listening all the way from France. We appreciate you. Mr. No Shaking and a number of other people say the Damfos are the ones causing the traffic at Abuja.
Thank you.
Indeed, but we also see a lot of civilians who simply just run the red lights because they're frustrated
Yes.
with obeying traffic laws at that time. The traffic nuisance on Danford drivers alone is a bit unfair. Every Monday and Thursday early morning, the Governor's Club that we can't mention, the real name along Ozumba, we also create senseless traffic with cars parked perpendicular to the road. I hope Operation Red Velvet will attend to that one too. They're just Operation Velvet. It says, now we're approaching the holiday season, it will be worse on that route. So bros, even Lagos big boys too cause traffic. Yes, I've been a witness, a direct witness of this. And messages coming in from Ike, who says, what missiles are soldiers escorting? Guys, we shouldn't justify the use of live ammunition against throwing stone Shiites. Tomorrow it could be pro-democracy protesters being gunned down.
Sure. We'll move on to this one from ThisDay newspaper. PenCom unveils guidelines on voluntary voluntary contributions. So the National Pension Commission, PenCom, have released official guidelines on voluntary contributions into the contributory pension scheme. They said this in a statement, released this information, they made it available to the newspaper, and said that the move was in furtherance of its mandate of regulating the pension industry. Gbolahan, what are your thoughts on this?
It's an excellent move. You're talking about PenCom anyway, and we know the value of our pension anyway, or the benefit of the pension system. Of course, PenCom has been around since 2004 now, and they've been paying out pension to those who are due their remittances without any default and any issues so far. So what this has just come up with, it's a voluntary contribution now, and what that entails is you actually contributing more than what you would usually contribute. Usually your employers would pay 10% while you pay 8% if you're in the formal sector. But now, rather than just paying 8%, you can actually decide to pay more so that you can have a lot more money when it's retirement time, or when it's due time to receive your pensions. So it's an excellent move on the administrators of effective administrators of the pension administrators anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, let's talk about the president, shall we, and where his certificate has gone. Fred, I'm with you on this one. The Guardian newspaper says the military have lost Buhari's certificate. At least that's what the presidency is claiming. Now, please do bear in mind that in 2015, his certificates were not presented. Why? Because he said if INEC needed them, go meet the military. Again, we're seeing this coming about. And what the president's spokesperson, Femi Adesina, has said is anyone who's bringing this up, this is a dead issue. If you're bringing this up right now, you're idle. Is it really idle to ask our president to obey the laws of the land?
Of course not. I actually chuckled when I first saw this because obviously it's part of the requirement to run for elections that he has to fill this out.
Yes.
And then he has to present it. So once again, we're at the matter, I guess the military actually admitting that they can find his document. I really don't know what to say.
But again, the exam board should still have records of his results, so that should still be something that they can transmit in a transcript. It may not be the original certificate, but you can obtain a transcript.
The truth is, a couple of people that joined the military at the era said that you actually submit all your documents.
Yes,
there.
several
so
people have verified that it is true.
So we can say right now that it's not really his fault that he can't find it. That's one. Two,
Yeah,
there's also a part that also says...
Yes, just
you should have a
finish.
copy.
Maybe
well,
he doesn't.
Not necessarily.
At the
but
time,
okay.
I mean, but also there's a section, I think 318 of the Constitution that says that primary school, that you could also have an alternative if you spend 10 years in public or private sector in the country. That I stumbled on that. So it's something that we should look at also. So based on that, he's okay to run. Okay, he doesn't...
Well, listen, I think fundamentally all that needs to happen is that whether it's the military or the exam board, whoever it is, can literally just verify this by presenting.
Yeah, but I'm saying that even if they don't,
true copy.
even if they don't have the secondary school certificate, according to that part, section 318 of the Constitution of Nigeria, as long as they spend 10 years, and of course they spend more than 10 years.
But the
10 years what?
The
10 years
the
of
fundamental
service
question here is how did he get into the military in the first place if that was a requirement at the time?
And at the
They say
time,
that he
we're
submitted
not.
his
He
certificate.
must have
That's
submitted
not-
at that time.
that's
I don't
not
think we're as
being
corrupt as we are
disputed.
right now.
That's
So
not
I don't
being
think it's
disputed.
something that we should really pay too much attention on. That's in my opinion, actually.
All right, thank you very much for that. But we'll move on. Fred, still staying with you for this next one. Sanusi, though, is saying stop electing leaders with no educational qualification. That's in from ThisDay newspaper, and he's worried about the level of decadence and decay in the country, and he says that such leaders cannot give what they do not have, and this is factual. What are your thoughts on this story?
And it's very true, no? He's speaking to what's been causing our poor level of advancement as a country. And the issue is actually we're in the 21st century world. You don't even just have to be educated. You have to know what's happening, right? So if you're lacking the basics, then how are you even able to keep up with the other things that are happening across the world, right? And he also speaks in the article that more money should be spent on education he speaks about the youth, but older adults can get educated too anyways. And that the money that's spent on subsidy, the fuel subsidies should be directed to education. And if that happens, then we would be able to build our bridges and roads, because most government want to seem like they're working, so they spend money building bridges, which seems obvious, as opposed to putting it towards education. But he's saying the right thing, right? We've struggled as a country for many years because, we have folks that are not qualified or are not best suited to make policies for us, and they don't have all the information and requirements to do that.
All right, thank you very much. And do they have what it takes? Speaking of having what it takes, up next from the Punch newspaper, Ayo, I believe I'm coming to you for this story. We're being forced to reduce generation, say a number of power firms. Big problems attributed to transmission and distribution, but it's reflecting on the Gencos and how much they're able to generate as a result. Ayo, please take us through
This is sad. We are now operating at 3,000 to 3,500. It said as at 6 a.m. on Sunday, it stood at 3,741 megawatts. And this is sad because the
We're a
Gencos
country that
can...
needs 180.
So we're not even anywhere close, and the few that we have to reduce. And what's also painful about this is now the Gencos are complaining because they're not operating at the optimal, and they're not being efficient, to be precise. There's a thermal plant by as much as 15 to 20%. So because of that, now they're having extra cost that is not being recognized by the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC. So they're kind of making losses based on that. And what's happening is that the transmission company, now let's also remember that the Genco has been fully divested, and but the transmission company is 100% Nigerian controlled, and the discos are 40% Nigerian. And so it looks like this goes back into the argument of selling off most of our assets, because the ones that are 100% not owned by the Nigerian institution itself are being optimal, at least able to give us 7,000, but now they are having to go down because of the ones that are being controlled. You know, it's sad, and it's something we really need to look at. We can't be operating at this time when we're trying to go up, and what we have up, we have to reduce it.
Well, it goes back to our previous story, doesn't it? People cannot give what they do not have. What are the policies that have been created that have allowed us to enter this mess that we are in? But we move on to our final story from the Punch newspaper. Speaking of a mess, alleged 100 billion naira tax evasion, 150 groups are asking the EFCC to probe Alpha Beta Consulting Limited and Ocean Trust Limited. Now, these are companies that have ties to Tinubu. So we're going to go straight to you for your thoughts on this one, friend.
The interesting thing is the person that is saying this was the former managing director and chief executive officer.
Sour grapes.
So,
Perhaps.
sour grapes, but he has insight, and he's pushing for like this over 100 billion naira in taxes that's not been properly, paid or accounted for. So, and that based on records, it states in the article too that the company earns about 40 billion a month. We always see this when it comes to an election cycle. I guess it's right to get the FCC to look into this, because every organization should be accountable and should be following due process of paying their taxes, because we're expected to. And this is actually part of a tax collecting agency, so it's only right that they're following suit too. EFCC's response is like they get thousands of petitions every day, and they're following the process to get to it. So
How convenient.
it's very, I guess it's convenient. But
Hopefully.
with this matter, is something that I think we should actually be investigated, or we should get like proper insight into it.
All right. Thank you very, very much. For
Hopefully,
that.
they'll get to it in our lifetime anyway. They'll get around to it in our lifetime.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's all the time we have for the stories this morning.
Yes, we apologize. We might not be able to take most of your comments.
Yes, we are a little bit out
It's
of
a
time.
lot.
Let's see if we can take just one comment very quickly. Sean says the giant of Africa is producing 3,000 megawatts.
Reducing.
Is reducing the 3,000 megawatts is generating because of distribution. I laugh whenever I come across that phrase. Sean, we laugh with tears in our eyes.
Yeah, so we're going to be taking most of one of the stories, really treating it in detail at the 9 o'clock hour. So do join us then. That's when we have time to talk in extent. Now, special thanks to our analysts who've come into the studio to analyze the stories, Mr. G Quest at Esho, and that's Ayo, and FB Alison, Fred. Thank you so very much, guys. Coming up next, Lagos, we talk sports inside the locker room, and that's in 15 minutes. Good morning.
Get quick access to notes from page by